Hi everyone, welcome back to the Babbling Irons. You got myself and Sloth today. We have something to be positive about. We saw a performance for the first time in a while. We saw a brilliant performance after being 2-0 down. There's a lot of positives. So stick with us. This might be a long one. There's a lot to go through in this game. A lot of it is positive. So stick with us. And let's review West Ham versus Arsenal. Hi everyone. So Sloth, believe it or not, we defied both of our expectations. Not only did we score one goal, we scored two goals and didn't lose the game. So yeah, it's good to be wrong sometimes, isn't it?
It is, and while we are probably, you can call us nitpicking, but it wouldn't be fair analysis of the game if we didn't actually pick up on a few little errors, few little gripes that we do have. However, it was an extremely positive performance, and I think I was just rewatching it a little bit, and as mentioned before, I got the incredible experience of going pitch side before the game and seeing a lot of the players warm up and just kind of seeing David Moyes up close. And as well, the referee's a big old bastard. He's at least 6 foot 2, 6'3". He's a big old he's really tall. We'll kind of try and sum up the aspects, positive sides of it, and kind of why for me it's one of those West Ham performances that you expect in terms of being a West Ham fan. If someone asks you your ideal West Ham performance, it's showing a bit of fight, it's showing character, and it's grabbing a couple of goals. Now, my ideal West Ham performance is a win, but I thought going into a game against the league leaders, there's not really much more that you can ask for than that when you're picking up a point. And I know Moyes made the point of saying towards the end, it looked like we could have grabbed the third. You and I will discuss a bit more on that later, and why perhaps that comment's a bit baffling from him. But overall, just a really amazing day for myself and my dad, but also a great performance, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alison, I think you smacked the nail really, really firmly on the head there. But yeah, the Fulham game was terrible. It was won that game, but it didn't really feel like much of a win based on how we played. I know some people enjoyed it, thought we did well tactically. I said some aspects of our game was good tactically, but others I thought was pretty poor. In this game, it did feel a bit like a win. Because of the position we were in after 10 minutes. Obviously, to come back as it is, it did feel a bit like a win. I did walk out tinged a little bit with frustration because I felt that there actually was a win there for us. But as Sloth said, we will get into why there is some elements of frustration for us. But please do not believe for 1 minute that we are not in any way, shape or form infused or happy about what we saw, because from where we were, it was a great performance. But before we get into that, let's start from the very basics of the game. Let's talk lineups. So, this was the lineup for the game. Pretty much as we said, really, Sloth, it would be the old guard in defence, really. But with the exception with Tilo Kehrer, which I think was a bit of a surprise when the game started. Everything else, I think, was pretty much as you would expect. Again, the thing that I say about every single time we show this kind of one, but look at the average age, 20.3. Now, I know people don't think that's necessarily that bad, but when you consider that is the oldest squad in the Premier League, and we're saying the average age of our squad is almost 30 years old, that is not a sustainable kind of approach for a team long term, but that's a discussion for another day. But when you saw those lineups, obviously Arsenal were really strong, only really missing one player in Saliba and Zinchenko. So besides that, Arsenal looked completely full strength. We looked, I would guess, maybe some people say a bit hodgepodge, and I know there was some definite rumblings before the game around Tilo Kehrer. So what was your thoughts prior to the game when you saw that lineup?
Well, I mean, we really kind of covered our fears about Cresswell, and I think they were very much warranted, and we were proved kind of right in the end, particularly that left hand side and the right side of Arsenal's attack absolutely caused us nightmares. But he did kind of straighten himself out in the second half somewhat more. Some awful decision making, but particularly with a certain free kick that I think
need we say? I don't think we need to talk about it. It was so bad.
Oh my God, I think everyone in the ground let out a collective swear word of some form.
Everyone could have been on the pitch at that point. It would have been a collective slap to Cresswell and Ben Rama. I think it would have just been a knocking of heads and just going, what?
Yeah. But
I think even the ref was baffled. I think that's why the ref blew his whistle. Like, nah, sorry, lads, that's so bad. I can't.
That's terrible. Yeah, no, I think we're looking at that lineup. Obviously, that front three is the one that is kind of tried and tested in terms of last season, and they are very productive. Obviously, we'll cover a bit more about who I wasn't popular. I'll let you in on a little secret, viewers, that I wasn't very popular in the group chat last night. Let me tell you that. But I think that those are our three. If we want anything from this season, they're gonna have to be firing on all cylinders in terms of if we want to progress in Europe, and if we do want to really get ourselves clear of the relegation zone. That is key. I think the lineup was one that you kind of looked at and thought we could get, if we play well, we can get something. But yeah, I hate to sound too pessimistic, but whenever I see Cresswell in a lineup now, I do kind of get worried, and maybe it's just sort of like the Vietnam flashback styles of Frankfurt and Lyon, and the idea of anyone with pace running at him. But it was a real surprise. Obviously, we started the game quite slowly, but that selection, I think it's almost. That's going to be it going forward, surely, in the coming weeks.
No, I totally agree. And I think for once, when you look at the average positions as well, obviously Arsenal, we know their players are everywhere. So, but I thought you can actually see there's a definite approach in terms of us being really positive. Kehrer obviously was basically playing a bit of as a sweeper role, really, when you look at it like this. But all in all, it was, really good kind of movement. I thought Paqueta and Rice were superb in the middle of the park yesterday. The work rate they got through was incredible. And in the first half, they were doing the work of two players consistently, because one of the players in midfield was anonymous, and that's me putting it very politely. I may go into more detail on what I thought about that player. Again, that was another one that that was a contentious conversation point in our group chat yesterday. But again, it was a player that, I didn't particularly like the player of one of our players for that first half, but I digress. Let's kind of, go into, the start of the game. Arsenal, their fluidity was brilliant. You've got to hold your hand up. I think the goals were defendable. Personally, I think there were mistakes constantly, but Arsenal are so good with their fluidity. They cause you to make mistakes. But again, it's something that they've got to work on, because I think when they look back on that, they will actually go, we should have done better on those goals. We should have defended those. And when we have a manager who prides himself on that defensive organisation, I think the players and him will sit back and go, yeah, there were problems there. And I think that early 10 minutes, we got a bit shell-shocked, I think. I think the performance was kind of there. Those fans were massively behind. And then we got sucker punched. It felt a bit like a sucker punch because it was only the second attack and first shot on goal that resulted in their goal. And, let's kind of have a look at it. Arsenal do really well. They got the ball out wide. We talked about this. Ben White is going to come inside. The Saka is going to constantly look to kind of come in. But, the pass he was able to play was just so easy to play into Saka. It draws Cresswell out and across to follow him. Obviously, he does the right thing. He hands over to Declan Rice, who also places pressure to Saka, and who then lays it into Partey, who then ultimately obviously lays it into Odegaard. But the thing that got me was that the positioning as well. Once Cresswell hands over, he doesn't then look once over his shoulder to see, is there any danger? Is there anyone around me? Again, Thilo Kehrer doesn't communicate. So there again, it's that communication that I keep saying is just not there for us. And again, Ben Rama is kind of marking out nothing. Ben White is behind him. Saka's in field. So there's no one in the right midfield position. So he should also be tucking inside, which again means that he's in a better position to come out and press Odegaard, which potentially stops that pass potential. If he's inside, potentially does that, but he's not. And, when Odegaard receives it, he's able to play it to Ben White. Again, Cresswell is
nowhere.
He's essentially that little blob that you can see in between where we have White written. That is Cresswell. No position to mark him. Thilo Kehrer, positionally, he's in a good position because he's right next to his centre-back. But the problem is his left-back's gone on a walkies. And as he's not noticed, there's not communication. He's not in a position then to go and really challenge or block Ben White. If he was probably a yard to his left, he's probably getting in a position to block Ben White's pass, cross against goal. And then again, back post, Bowen, Cresswell. Neither one of them looking over their shoulder. Neither one assessing the danger. Neither one of them aware that Jesus is going to be there. Now, we talked about it before the game, how much Arsenal like to rotate. The likes of Martinelli will come inside. Jesus will go out wide to the left. All of these things are things that we talked around, but we just weren't looking around enough in that early first 10-minute stage. It wasn't, I know you need to have eyes in the back of your head a bit against Arsenal, but again, some of it is just basic football. Just look where Bowen is. All he has to do is look over his left shoulder to see Jesus is there, and he comes across, to drop in.
Well, I think I saw a lot of criticism of Ben Rama, and it's fair. I do think though, when you're a left back, your first job is to defend, and Cresswell just completely loses his man. And regardless of whether you've handed over or not to someone, you need to be picking someone up, and he just doesn't. He kind of, it's almost like a really kind of basic schoolboy error where you go, oh well, I get it's not my man. I gave it to someone else. It's like, no, your job is to defend. Therefore, you should have been picking him up. If the person you hand him off to is not on top of him, you've not handed him off, correct?
He handed over Saka, who Rice then did, and then he just kind of stayed in a place. Didn't look. He should have dropped back next to Kehrer. There was time in that sequence for him to drop back, or at least tell Kehrer, I need you to go here and I'll drop into your centre-back position. There was time and there was enough of a moment for them to orchestrate and manage themselves. And, because of that kind of mess, it was played across. Again, Soufal is not aware and is behind, so he just kind of goes as if to clear it, and then kind of pulls his foot away because he seems to be worried that he can put his own net.
I think Fabianski puts his foot out towards the ball, and it's one of those things where that's the natural reaction. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you're quick enough to get to it. And I think that is what causes Soufal not to kick for it, because
he second guess. You can see he clearly second guesses because his foot kind of comes out and then he pulls it back, and then it just goes into obviously Jesus's path, who just
taps it
into an empty net. And that was their second attack of the game, first shot on goal, and it was 1-0. And at that point, it was just familiar story of the Newcastle game just kind of washed over me at that point.
Yeah.
And then, let's just go straight into the second one. Because it came 3 minutes after.
The funny thing is we started the game quite positively. Apart from the goal, it's that old chestnut. But we were pressing quite well, and we
one time we stopped. We kind of just got a bit comfortable, I think.
Yeah, and I think before I kind of said that this is the team going forward, and I think you can't drop anyone based on that performance unless yes. But how do you say to a player, well, you've just drawn 2-2 with Arsenal, the league leaders, I'm going to drop you for the next game? Yeah. It's tough, but we linked up well, and I think we physically dominated them pretty much. We bullied a lot of the centre backs, and you could see that we were up for it. But as you said, I think it was as soon as we conceded so early, and especially as we conceded the second one, it was almost the alarm bells that West Ham alternative commentary like to play, like that siren's going. And yeah, it was a bit nervy, nervy for a little bit.
No, it certainly was. And the second goal, again, it's Arsenal do well. They rotate the ball. I think it comes, it's cleared. First initially, ball goes in, and it's Martinelli kind of crosses it in with the outside of his boot. Then it's cleared out to Tierney, who dropped into that midfield role. And this was the thing that we really struggled with at this point, was just how fluid Arsenal were. They were going from a back three to a back four, back into a back three, even sometimes a two in that opening 10 minutes. So they were constantly creating overloads, and we were really, really struggling to get anywhere around it. Apart from Rice and first really good early minutes where he just flew into a couple and really pressured them. We just really struggled to kind of get it. But, when it came to this situation, the ball goes out to Martinelli. And again, this is where the problem started. Benrahma sitting a bit too high, probably should be sitting a little bit deeper, just a little bit on the edge of the area maybe. And again, Cresswell's in there, not looking over his shoulder, not seeing if there's anyone behind him. He's obviously marking Saka, but if you look in the middle, we have two centre-backs. Cresswell is now technically marking Saka with Kehrer, and you have Zuma in a position to mark Jesus. At that point, it should have been communication. There should be Cresswell looking over his shoulder, Benrahma potentially looking over and telling Cresswell, you need to get out to Odegaard, or him taking responsibility. One of them needed to be aware of that situation, and then trust Kehrer and Zuma to manage Jesus and Saka. But we don't do that. We don't communicate. We don't manage that situation. So when it gets to the point where he's about ready to cross, if you look at that, Zuma's marking no one, nothing, absolutely no one. Tilo is obviously marking Jesus, which is right because of where Zuma's position is. He has to come across. And because of that, Cresswell is coming across. Now, if Cresswell would have handed over Saka and then Zuma pulled back, we would have this position covered because we'd have our defence be spread out. We'll be covering each one of those positions. Odegaard would have a much harder opportunity than he does. And obviously Benrahma hasn't scanned, hasn't seen him, isn't aware of Odegaard on his shoulder. Again, we watch the ball too much as a team when we defend. We don't really scan around the pitch. This was something I noticed in this game. There's hardly enough of it. And let's be fair to Arsenal. That first goal, really well done. Probably defendable, but it was a brilliant goal and great movement. Second goal, again, very good movement. They made us make those mistakes. I know I'm saying how we have made these kind of defensive errors and we should have done better. But again, this is also a result of playing against a very good opposition. And the reason why we're calling out all of these other individual components is that football's not about that man didn't do his job, therefore it's his fault. Something I got told by someone who actually in football, believe it or not, actually was one of the opposition scouts for Cardiff, is if you think a goal scored by a team who only has one mistake, you are not seeing football properly. Every goal will probably have at least 5 mistakes within it. And that's what you have to do. You have to go over the entire sequence to review as to where could that have been defended, because there are always opportunities. If you only ever look at the last step, you're not seeing the whole game. And that's why when we look at this, we always say, there's an error, there's a bad misplacement, there's a bad positioning on this piece. It's because goals don't come about through one individual mistake. Sometimes, yes, but by and large, it's because people haven't done their job elsewhere. Like, again, why was the cross not stopped? Why would Soufal go out? It's obviously worried about Martinelli's pace, taking him on the outside, but he allows him on his inside onto his stronger foot. So to say it's just Benrahma is at fault, it's just fun. It's a fundamental lack of understanding of how a natural goal was scored, in my opinion. And Benrahma, yes, should 100% have been better, should have followed Odegaard. But also, Cresswell should have been in a better position.
Yeah. There's multiple mistakes. Yeah, there's multiple mistakes. And I think, as you say, and as we both said, that Arsenal possess so much pace. I mean, even just Martinelli and Saka alone, they are so quick, and their movement, their constant sort of change of pace, it does cause you to lose track of them. But that's why communication is so important. And, there's so many players there who all it takes is one man to just say back post and stick to Odegaard. Right, Cresswell, don't stop pissing about and go and mark Saka. Pick him up, shirt tight, stay on him. And not just Cresswell. Cresswell could say that to Benrahma. It's irrelevant. But as you say, it's a combination of these little mistakes. And as we said, this is a compliment to Arsenal, because they made us make these mistakes with their movement, with the pace that they possess. And it's an excellent cross as well. It's a really brilliant bit of
pinpoint, isn't it? It's right into the area you want it to be, right on the edge of the 6-yard area. Player running onto it. Yeah, just
high enough that Zuma can't get his head on it, and it's a great finish. I mean, you can also question Fabianski's keeping for it, because it is pretty much straight at him.
His legs as well. Yeah,
but it's a really well taken goal.
Yeah, no, I think to Alisson's point earlier, I think it kind of did at that point. Yeah, I think we did have us wanting to get behind sofas. There was a real feeling at that point of this Arsenal drumming. I
wanted to get behind the stadium bar at that point. Yeah. I was scared.
It didn't feel good. And after that, obviously Arsenal, I think we kind of got ourselves in a bit of shape. We kind of then controlled ourselves a little. We kind of stopped Arsenal from creating as much. And I think Arsenal took their foot off the gas a little. And I think that's what really stopped Arsenal, because once they did, and we got the slightest bit of a foothold, we didn't stop. And we really, really went at them and really made it difficult for them. And what I do find interesting, and I can kind of see, Cliff's point as well. It's not necessarily all on Moyes. The players massively stepped up when it went 2-0 down. As we often know, we're quite pragmatic, and when we tend to go 1 or 2 down, we open up a bit more because we're allowed to play. But the players did clearly step up. So I saw someone saying the other day that sometimes when you've got those types of players, sometimes it isn't on the manager when you perform, because those players every now and then will step up. Now, I'm not saying yesterday's performance isn't on Moyes in terms of how we improved, because he did make some changes which made us play better. I will completely. I understand the standpoint as well.
I think that when we're talking about decision making, there was a real lack of decision making towards the end of the game. Moyes did say, like, "Oh, I thought we looked more likely to score the third," and I was thinking Antonio was breathing out his backside from about the 60th minute. He wasn't pressing. He was struggling,
but also right at the end, he kept telling Fabianski to slow down and not get up, play the ball quickly.
I mean, So I kind of find that comment really strange. Like, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna say, yeah, I thought we looked likely to score the third, well, then you have to be making you have to make an attacking change, or you have to notice that there's someone who's kind of holding the side back a little bit in terms of the attack and make a change. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think you could see that the players were at it from the off, but again, it was those little silly mistakes that they made Moyes' job a lot harder.
Yeah, and I think there was a moment for me, it was a moment of frustration that very quickly turned to a moment of elation, where again we seemed to get a bit of confidence, and we got the ball at the back, played into Cresswell. Obviously, I think the good thing is Saka actually looking to press Cresswell actually meant he had to play it. And the ball comes into Paqueta. So again, a nice little bit of rotation between Paqueta and Benrahma. And it's just a lovely, delicate little right-footed dink into the path of Benrahma. Just takes it beautifully into his stride. And doesn't have to touch the ball, plays it directly between the two centre-backs. Holding and Gabriel at times were really struggling with Antonio. They really weren't doing it a little while before. I think they cut across him. Both ran diagonally to just shut him out, and the ref gave nothing. Times the ref was a bit, I think, unfair to us on some of those calls.
Well, I mean, he should have been booking the Arsenal players for time wasting, and I mean that's not me being biased as a West Ham fan. I thought that Ramsdale in particular was ripping the backside out of how long he was taking with his kicking. And, you know, he'd take a little touch and just then adjust the ball a bit more before he kicked. And you thought, no, come on, like you need, as all you want in football from an official is consistency and correct calls. Like that's all you want. And for me, there was no consistency with him in terms of that time wasting.
I always feel that a ref within the first 5 minutes needs to set a marker. Just pick a player, essentially. When players start wasting time, just gut that player, give them the yellow card, turn around and go, that goes for all of you now. Any one of you does it, that's it. Yellow card.
You don't even need to do that. All you need to do is say, last one. That's your last one. Next one, you're in the book. And you know, if you do that and you're consistent, you follow it up the next time it happens, then you stamp that out, because they're going to be playing with fear.
But also the one thing though, I'm glad they time wasted, because it just made it all the sweeter, because the arrogance, the game management, as they would have said it was, come back to haunt them and just massively slapped him in the face. And I'll talk about another thing that made me even more happy about it, which was a chant from Arsenal, which we then got to throw back in their faces, which they didn't like, and they went very, very quiet afterwards. But we'll get into that. We are digressing slightly. But you say that moment where Antonio kind of looked like he was going through, he looked like he had the power, and then Antonio does Antonio. He's got all of this space down the left-hand side, and he tries to cut in, and we lose the ball. At that point, I was just so frustrated because we'd lost the ball. It was stupid. We had all of this space he could have ran into. But having said that, Arsenal retained the ball. They decide to play it across their goal. Comes out to Tierney, who then puts it into Thomas Partey, who does have a touch of we won't say anymore. But he then tries to be smart, but Declan Rice just comes out of nowhere, absolutely steamrolls in. And I'll explain to Arsenal fans, if they're watching, who don't understand the handball rule. Declan Rice did handball it. You are correct. But VAR cannot rule it out, because he does not score directly after handling the ball. He passes it to another player who wins a penalty. They cannot do anything. If Paqueta had scored, they can do nothing. Had Declan Rice handballed it and then went on to score, they could have reviewed. There is nothing they can do, because it's then a second, third phase of play. End of. It's not handball in terms of the game. Yes, technically it hits his hand accidentally, but it's not a handball. There's nothing VAR could do.
If you're going to start picking up on accidental handballs like that, then you're going to be given free kicks. It's like with the shirt pull rule. If you're going to give that as a foul, and you could say, it is a handball, it is a foul, it is a shirt pull, but it's completely accidental. Partey tries to flick it up, and Rice gets his chest onto it, and it it hits his arm.
Yep.
Now, you cannot give that as a referee. As anyone who's played football, he's got his arm down at his side. It's not in an unnatural position. And what do you want him to do? Do you want him to chop
an unnatural position later on, actually? So, the Rice one, it wasn't a handball. It's completely, it was accidental. That happens so many times in football and they're not given. We saw it against Fulham, I think, actually, when the ball kind of bobbled up and twice hit Soufal on the arms. It's an accident. You can't do anything. It's like, and then obviously again against Ghent. It's completely accidental handball, but it resulted directly to a goal. Therefore, that can be ruled out.
If you want to give that, you have to change the law of the game to say if it hits the hand, if it hits the arm, it's a free kick. You have to
last season. Last season, that was the rule, and then they realised it's ridiculous. It stops the game, and it's too confusing because there's too many people that interpret it a different way, and it's all about perception. So they just eradicated it and changed it to a better rule, which arguably favours the attacking team. And we want football to be exciting. We have to kind of accept those. Yeah, it's annoying when it happens, but we've seen more than our fair share of dodgy decisions. So, it happens from time to time. You kind of got to accept it. But, Partey is too busy then complaining, doesn't do anything. Declan just runs into the box, plays it into Paqueta. Paqueta's smart. Now, does Paqueta dive? Maybe he goes down a bit easy. Maybe he's already on his way down. But the truth of the matter is, had Jesus done that, Arsenal fans would be lauding brilliant attacking play, smart centre-forward play. Harry Kane does this almost every chance he gets in the area. Paqueta lulls him in. It touch is maybe a little heavy because Holding then gets the clear, but he does. He initiate contact. He does a bit, but also
he exaggerates.
Gabriel is stupid, to be honest. His decision making. There was no need for him to make that challenge. He tries to pull out because he realizes the moment he goes to ground, I've made a mistake. He knows he's made a mistake, and he clips him. He takes him out. It just, the simple truth is, it's a penalty. Yes, it might be soft, however you want to deem it, but it's a penalty. And the man who doesn't miss from the penalty spot at the moment, compared to everyone else, Benrahma, it's a brilliant finish. Just taps it into the bottom, and my dog seems to be wanting to say hello as well. But he, puts the ball in the bottom corner, 1-1, and then all of a sudden things started looking a bit rosy. The crowd got back into it. There was this kind of feeling of maybe, just maybe, we could get something out of this. And at that point, I was still thinking, Arsenal saying that Pac-Man dived, but I can understand people saying it's a dive, but I think in modern football, it's what you call smart attacking play. He knew contact was coming, and he accepted contact and took the foul.
He exaggerates the contact because Gabriel's made a silly challenge, but he also he does what we've been calling for players to do for a long time, which is actually go down. We how many times have we seen fans complain about the likes of Antonio when he's being manhandled and he doesn't go down, or we don't get it when he's getting clearly pulled down to the ground. He just exaggerates the contact, and he gives the ref no other choice but to give it. And exactly, it's a professional exaggeration of the contact. It's people are saying it's a dive, but it's because he makes the dive motion, and Harry Kane does that, and everyone's calling it smart forward play. They're saying, oh yeah, he's won the penalty there. And it's the same old.
Won the penalty. That's the right thing is he's won the penalty. He didn't draw a foul. He won a penalty by essentially saying, "I know there's going to be contact. I'm going to exaggerate contact, but I'm also not. I'm not going to come away from it. I'm going to take the contact, and I'm going to see if I can get what I can get out of it." And we have to credit Paqueta because he's done the cynical thing that we've asked players. He does it, and let's be honest, Arsenal fans would have been loving had one of the Arsenal players done that and won it.
Yeah.
Because it happened against them. It's a team is cheating. It's unjust. It's unfair. But it was a great piece of
every single football fan watching this, whether you're West Ham, Arsenal, whoever you support, if your player has that challenge, and then they try and stay on their feet, or they jump over the tackle, and they don't get a penalty because of it, then you're fuming. I don't care who you're talking about. You could be Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you could be Romelu Lukaku, whoever you want to say. If you don't go into that contact and you don't exaggerate it, you're letting your side down. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, I love it. because I don't like that side of the game really." When you're thinking about if he'd gone down with no contact, that's different. What he's done is dark arts. It's the old nip at the shirt. It's the old tripping someone before they can break away. And he's ridden a challenge and thrown himself to the ground to win a penalty. It's the dark arts of the game. Whether we like it or not, it's irrelevant. It's still a penalty.
Yep. And I'm just putting this up because it's a funny comment. I find it quite funny. But also, you haven't seen an arse unless you've seen Trevor Sinclair running down the wing. You haven't seen an arse until then.
Well, I said I was rewatching the game earlier, and I do wonder if there's a kind of arse size to running style ratio, because he does run like Velma from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And we also know a certain other winger at Chelsea who's known for his derriere and who runs like Velma from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. But anyway, we digress again. But it's always good to have a nice little laugh halfway through. But after that goal, though, we looked really good, Sloth. We had a real moment of sustained pressure. I think we had a succession of corners. We had about 3 in a row. One of them, probably about the only contribution in the first half Souček did, was he got on a header, and then it just bounced over Antonio's head. But then Antonio also didn't really jump for it. I think he felt he was offside. But again, he had an opportunity. There was we said Arsenal will struggle at set pieces, and I think that we really saw them creaking, and it just felt like we were just that small little kind of half second away, that maybe that just half an inch too much of a ball away from getting a goal. And even Zuma right at the end of the half had just a little kind of tame toe poke as well. But we were definitely in the ascendancy as that second half went on, and the crowd were really going up for it. I think Arsenal, you could see they were a bit on the ropes. I don't think they kind of expected it. And to say that the crowd were boisterous is an understatement. I know.
Well,
my voice is struggling today, to be honest, from it.
When they missed the penalty, that was like we'd scored. That was like we'd scored a goal. It was rocking in there, and we were really buoyed on by that. We'll talk about it more, but
let's get into it now. Let's get into that penalty. Like, again, it was like, it felt like Newcastle all again came over. We got a goal right near the end of the half. We were in the ascendancy. We were looking good. Come out in the second half, start off well. We get a couple of corners, looking like we come strong. Arsenal's first attack, they get a corner. I think we clear it, goes out for another corner. Second corner comes in, and Tilo does well. It's a nice header out. Antonio initially does very well. He bursts out, and then he does the inexplicable thing of just shoving his arm out.
Yeah.
And the ref was looking directly at it. He tried to style it out by running off straight after handballing it, as if no, I blocked it, hit my chest. But it's just one of those moments where you just go, why? What are you doing?
Why have you done that?
Can't have your arm up, in that position. It's completely unnatural. Where I sit directly behind that goal on the right-hand side. So I just saw him run out with his arm out. And the moment that he hit it, I just tell him it's a penalty. Before the ref even blew his whistle, I just knew it.
Yeah.
And then obviously the penalty's given. Interestingly, just before we're about to take the penalty, the ball is given to Saka. I don't think he was initially going to take it. I think Jesus had it the entire time, and then he hands over to Saka, who puts it down, does a little shimmy, and then blasts it wide. And as you say, at that point, roof went off again, and there was just that feeling that maybe it is going to be up. Maybe it is our day. Maybe we have a chance here.
I think, yeah. I mean, we are gonna cover Antonio's ups and downs in more detail, and how I mean, what he did was cause them nightmares. However, what he also did was cause me nightmares, and he caused. I think it's fair to say he caused West Ham nightmares at times, because that is just a stupid thing to do, and it's, as you say, it's a clear penalty. But why is his arm out there in the first place? If you know, even if you're going to turn, just keep your arms in. Just like you know they're going to give that now. Why are you even giving him the chance of awarding a penalty? So
it was a soft shot as well from Martinelli. He hit it on the bounce, hit with his instep, and it was just a soft one. It probably was only running through to one of our players. He could cleared it. It's
one of those where
set in and just threw an arm out.
It's one of those where if Antonio had got his head stuck in front of it, you know, he might take it full on in the bonks and be like, a bit dazed for a second. But it wasn't hit with venom. It was one of those where, you know, the keeper's probably going to save it if it's on target. I don't even know if it was, but it was just a really poor penalty to concede. And it was a very West Ham penalty to concede.
It was. But I think, you know, let's give Antonio some credit as well now. Obviously, we've kind of talked around. It'll be another instance where we talk about one thing that frustrated us, but there are also good with what happens in it. But, you know, Antonio was a constant nightmare for Holding and Gabriel. I think him and Gabriel had a really good battle. There's one sequence where they both steamrolled each other off the pitch. And you see Gabriel gets up, just hooks him up, and they have a little hug. I think it was one of those of a player that really enjoyed that tussle with Antonio. And I think Arsenal's defence looked a bit shaky at times. I don't think Gabriel didn't look particularly happy at times having to defend against Antonio. Holding certainly wasn't enjoying it either. Tended to try to leave it as much as he could to Gabriel. But yeah, I thought Antonio was not doing anything amazing. Did have a good game. I can't say it was very good because of that handball decision for me.
Well,
I can't accept that as a player having a fantastic game. When they do something like that, it's just idiotic. And I can't. But other than that, I think he kept them very honest. He chased, harried, hassled them. He did have some good surging runs, helped us get up the pitch. But yes, I sometimes feel you're like, you just want a bit more. You just feel like there's something else in that tank that he hasn't quite given us. He
was physically really hard to handle for them. However, for me, I think his work rate was not there. As we both said, like he was breathing at his backside after about 60 minutes. And I was thinking, he's not done that much. Like, how are you that tired? But he just kept sprinting. He kept doing these intensive sprints. And that's probably why he was as out of breath as he was.
I think he did do some good covering across. Yeah. When I compare to say Souček, who made 2 passes in the first half.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. He was awful.
He was diabolical.
He was awful. He had two passes in the first half. In the second half, he only made 11 passes. He made 13 passes in the game, 12 of them completed, but half of them was as close as 5-yard passes. They weren't really anything to write home about. He made a couple of very good challenges in the second half. We'll actually touch on a couple of those as well. But by and large, bloody disappointing. He just had a lovely jog around the pitch half the game.
Physically, he was bullied yesterday as well. And for what I said in our group chat, and I think I tweeted it as well, when you're 30 foot tall, you cannot be that bad in the air. He was being bullied to every single aerial ball.
We both mentioned it in chat. In our WhatsApp chat, guys. we obviously had quite a bit of back and forward. Frankie, I think you're watching tonight, mate. So obviously 1, rest that well, and 2, you're not here to stop us talking about it. So we're gonna. But yeah, like he was brilliant at defending set pieces, because obviously when you look at he had like 6 clearances and so on, it sounds great, but most of it's from set pieces. But other than that, we had a couple of good challenges in the opposition third. Didn't contribute anything into possession. How can you say a player, when we have about 200 odd passes, I think we're just not shy of 300, he only contributed to around 13. Yes, he had the best pass percentage at 83%, but he only missed one pass out of 13, whereas Rice and Paqueta were constantly trying to drive us forward, constantly trying to make line-breaking passes. And whilst Souček did link things together, not to be rude, but I think any one of us could have made those passes.
Yeah. That is a case of stats being incredibly misleading, really. Let's face it. Yeah. And, you know, I'm going to go to another player that did cause a bit of an uproar in the chat last night. And I'll quite openly say it. I thought Antonio had a poor game. I think I say poor. He was probably a 6 out of 10, but I think he could have done a lot more. And particularly his finishing, his headers were awful. He was. Oh my god! It was.
We'll get to a decent header at the end of the first half, but it was kind of, he headed it down and it went over. But yeah, we'll talk about a header in a minute. Let's park that for a minute. And we'll kind of get into it, because I want to talk about some positives. We've been a bit negative on certain things here, but you know, I do want to talk about, you know, some of the really good positives that we had. And after they conceded the goal, again, set pieces, we constantly said set pieces were going to be really important. We had a long throw into the area. These long throws were constantly causing them a pain in the arse, because we got Zuma was going forward, Souček was getting in there. I don't think Souček won one of those headers. I think it was only Zuma who won. But yeah, Gabriel, to be fair to him, does an absolutely brilliant header. Absolutely powers the header out. And we had so many players forward, and it just nicely came to Kehrer and bounced. And got to give Bowen credit. His movement was absolutely brilliant here. Yeah. He kind of moves and drifts over to the left-hand side. He kind of drops to the edge of the area. He moves out of the Arsenal defence. But that entire time, there's no doubt in my mind Kehrer picked him out with that. He made the right pass. He just floated it over into a space where he knew it was going to be dangerous and where Bowen's going to be. And in all fairness to Bowen, because it is a ridiculously hard finish, what he had to do, because it's come over his shoulder, and he just had to make decent contact. It wasn't the cleanest, but he had to make good contact, and he hits it to the ground. And that hit into the ground is what does it, because Ramsdale doesn't have a chance. He can't get a firm enough hand to it, goes into the back area. Arsenal players completely thought he was offside, had no idea where he was. And I don't know about you, but pandemonium went on where we were. It ended up being a massive melee, everyone hugging everyone going nuts. I think I lost my voice for the next 2 to 3 minutes because we were going so much. But it was one of those moments where you thought we deserved that. You know, Arsenal had a couple of little opportunities where they flash a ball across the face of the goal, but by and large they weren't as threatening. Their movement was great, but they didn't necessarily threaten as much after that penalty. I can only think of probably 2 or 3 occasions really where they got in behind us and came close. But otherwise, I think we really rode a storm, and we were the team massively in the ascendancy right up to probably about the 65 to 70th minute. I think we really were in the ascendancy. And I think to your point, Sloth, you were talking about the substitutes. It's that game management and reading of the game to understand that, yes, we're in the ascendancy, but you maybe now need to freshen it up. Bring someone else in to help with that ascendancy, not running those players down on empty and then making the subs. Because what we saw of Arteta, he recognised, we're in trouble, takes off Partey, who was literally, he failed the Declan Rice audition. Quite frankly, he got bullied by Declan Rice.
Well, he was brilliant. He was brilliant in the first 20 minutes. And then it was like, it went to his head, and he just was like, you saw it when he gave the ball away against Rice for our first goal, and he just kind of went, like he signalled that it was a handball. Didn't make any effort to. There
you go, Frankie. I'll put it up for you, mate. There you go.
And for Frankie's point as well, that right hand side was fantastic. As a left back, as a defender, for me, Soufal was
he's a player we haven't mentioned.
He was the standout. But Bowen was brilliant as well, and he did what we've both kind of been critical of at times. Covered Soufal so well. He kept tucking back in and causing Saka problems. He was biting at the heels of Tierney, and that right hand side. If they perform like that for the rest of the season, we will be safe in no time, and we'll probably be in a European final as well.
I tweeted after the game this game has to be the standard. There's no ifs, buts, maybes, no questions. 100% now, this has to be a standard that we play to. And it should be a very strong reminder to everyone not on the playing field that this is a team that needs to be able to go out and attack and express themselves. And I thought Paqueta in that second half was just linking play. He was pulling strings. Him and Rice were brilliant. They were both dropping deep or coming short. They were going in behind. They were constantly making these fantastic little kind of moves and pulling strings. And
I mean, I'm not going to pretend it was all good. He did.
Oh, no, it wasn't all good.
He did play a hospital pass at one point where he tried to get it to Cresswell and he just completely underhit it. But that's what you get with Paqueta. Yeah. He's going to try and link up the play. He's going to try and play those difficult balls. And sometimes it's not going to work. Sometimes it's not going to pay off. And it might result in a counter that
well, I think we both would say that having a player who's high risk, high reward is much better than, a steady Eddie who's going to just play a little 5 yards here, a little 5 yards there. You'd rather a player's going to take a chance and maybe make the odd kind of hospital pass and so on. But, and I think we'll just go on to again. We'll just go on one of those kind of sequences again where we were really good, and it's just unfortunate that we didn't capitalize. And this is again an example of Paqueta dropping deep. And we started to find holes in Arsenal's midfield, and they were really struggling to kind of contain the fact where Declan Rice were and where Paqueta was, because they actually in the end started to do what Arsenal were doing to us. We had really good kind of movement between them, and again, you can pretty much see we've got a back three here. And then Soufal's pushed really high. That kind of makes an additional man in midfield, but Paqueta drops and he gets the ball. And again, he's ready. He's willing and he's actually accepting pressure. Pressure comes in and he knows where the players are. He's got Declan Rice and Souček ahead. But again, the important thing, we have two midfielders directly behind Arsenal's line of press and directly on their defence. That's something we haven't seen nearly enough this season. And he makes this pass, and in all fairness to Soufal, moves quicker than he normally does and just plays it out to Bowen. Again, this is where Bowen was genuinely tormenting Tierney at times in this second half. Tierney definitely got a good run out in this game. And again, as Frankie said, Bowen over Saka. But it was one of those games where Saka was probably largely ineffective, really, because in all credit to Cresswell, did very well. He had support from Ben Rama, but Cresswell actually did really well against Saka, which is a surprise because we know what he's like normally against pace. But again, digress. But Bowen, when he drives into the area, he just absolutely kills that Arsenal defence. And what I really also found slightly frustrating, we mentioned this before with the likes of Declan, if he wants to be that number 8 known for scoring, he's got to show more attacking intent and more awareness to get forward, because here's Paqueta. You can see Paqueta here. Let's not forget, Paqueta starts to move here, ends up in our half, and by the time that Bowen is crossing the ball, Paqueta's in the box. And let's also not forget, Declan Rice is ahead of him. So is Souček. But Paqueta shows that intent. This is why I tend to be more favourable in my critique and sometimes with Paqueta, and I will allow some of those misplaced passes because it's by and large what he does is positive. And I think you have to concentrate on those positives and what they do well. And I know I've been really down on Souček, but again, I will praise the good moments and the good elements that he does. And what, again, if maybe Rice pushes forward again, it's another body in the box. Antonio doesn't ever really drive forward, as you say, he's kind of blowing a bit out of his arse. Ben Rama doesn't necessarily take a chance until too late. Again, he should be trying to sprint in across the face of Ben White, in all honesty, or sprinting around to the back post. Ideally, the back post, because Ben White can't see him. Again, if he goes across the front of him, Ben White's not going to see him until it's too late. So it's just kind of those little moments where one or two players not necessarily taking a chance, and it was a brilliant ball from.
I mean, if
one of those ones you just want into the area, if you was a centre forward, you would just be salivating.
That's the thing that we really lack is we have a real lack of a poacher's mindset in our attacking three. But I bet you if Bowen was where Benrahma was, Bowen peels off to that back post, because that is what Bowen does have. He thinks about that sort of attack and he thinks about what he can do there. And I think Benrahma just kind of, he didn't commit to it. Whether he has that instinct or not to be that poacher, to give himself time as well. That's what you do. If you're going to the back post and the ball is played in, you give yourself more time. It might only be a couple of split seconds, but you give yourself
to Ben White, really, doesn't he? He has to be on his shoulder and closer to him. So he's absolutely in a blind spot, so he can get on those.
Even if you're a yard or two off him, as long as you're at that back post, you give yourself time to think about the finish. And we've seen it when certain one-footed players, if it's the perfect ball for Ings, because he would follow in and he would make that run to the back.
He's always a front post runner as well, isn't he? He's that kind of player that would run to the front post, or as you say, goes to the back post. He's that kind of player.
And I mean, that is the sort of ball where Souček a couple of seasons ago would have been bombing forward and would have been about to throw himself at it. And it's that total lack of a killer instinct, poacher's instinct, whatever you want to call it, within the squad is kind of showing itself, because the one person who has it, apart from Ings, obviously, the one person on the pitch who has it was playing the ball in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think at that point in the game, we were absolutely and utterly in the ascendancy. And it's one of those moments where I was sitting there praying the players would be helped out. I think there was a lot of good Moyes did, and he deserves a hell of a lot of praise. The game management at that point then starts to, well, if you felt we were good to win the game, you've got to be doing everything you can. Get maybe more attacking players on. You know, we saw with Arteta, he felt he could win the game. He empties the bench and brings on his attacking players. I think he probably made the wrong decision taking off Jesus, but again, I think it's maybe match fitness. But we've got to smell blood in the water. And around about that period, you would say maybe bringing on Cornet, that injection of pace, maybe taking off Benrahma or taking off Souček, and maybe jigging that midfield to kind of maybe bring Benrahma more central and take a little bit of a gamble, and getting that pace on that left wing against Ben White was the thing to do. But we didn't. We kind of held, because again, it's something that Moyes has been criticised about ever since Everton days, and it's something that's always been said. And he's even said it, that he doesn't like to make subs in games, because he likes if a team's going well, he doesn't like to disrupt it, for one, which is a fair point. And two, he likes players to be on the pitch until he thinks they have nothing left to give, which is admirable. You know, no player wants to come off, but you've also sometimes got to be. It's not about the player, whether you think that player has an extra 5 minutes in them. But if you get a player that can give you, who, you know, is about, you know, quarter of a tank left or a third of a tank left, why are you letting that player on the pitch who's maybe not going to have that little kind of that half second's worth of movement because of the tiredness in their body when someone else can come? And it's just that timely subs. It's just that thing that is constantly missing, which I think which is what always separates Moyes from those elite managers, in that he doesn't seem to set the blood sometimes in the water.
It's also that, I mean, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and I think I mentioned it after the Fulham game, about if you're bringing a player on and they get a clinical chart, they get the chance to win the game, you don't want them to be straight off the bench. You want them to have gotten their footing. You want them to be up to the pace of the game and a bit more confident. You'd much rather have a player one-on-one with the keeper who's been on the pitch for 10, 15 minutes than a player who's been on for 5 and it's maybe his first chance. because we don't have anyone apart from Ings who you would really call a clinical finisher that would be burying that the first chance they get. So why you haven't substituted on an attacking player, given them a bit more time, say, look, you've got 20 minutes, 25 minutes, go out, give me 100% work rate and show me why I should put you on the team sheet next week. Why you don't do that, I don't know. And, you know, I think it's a huge flaw. I think it's a huge flaw in Moyes' game. And I think that's, but it's, I don't want to be too harsh because, again, a point against the league leaders, absolutely fantastic result. However, if he's going to say that he felt there was a third goal there, then we need to assess that. We need to kind of analyze that comment. And, you know, the reason there wasn't a third goal is partly because of the decisions you make.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but not bringing on, whilst you're in the ascendancy, making positive changes to add fresh legs, more impetus, because that's ultimately it. Their defense is tiring. Our attack is tiring. They didn't make any changes to their defense. In fact, they went to a back five because they brought on Reece Nelson and so on. So they moved into a formation that they're not necessarily that familiar with to try and get more players forward. Bringing on Cornet maybe 10, 15 minutes sooner would have got him more in the game, could have given him more chance. Maybe getting Fornals coming in for Souček, maybe more kind of decisive passes and so on. That maybe would have come out. But, you know, it didn't happen. We carried on. But that's not to say that we didn't then have a really good chance towards the end where, you know, Souček makes a fantastic tackle, and I know I've been very critical of him. I don't think he was very good at all. In my opinion, he was awful. He was very poor, an absolute passenger for the entire game. He just had a lovely stroll around the pitch half the time, made a couple of headers, had a lovely stroll. That was pretty much what he did. Got a couple involved in a couple of passes. One of the passes, we had a really good passing sequence. He was lucky. And where I sit, I can see that Paqueta had to sprint from behind Ben White to get in front of him, to basically get on the ball to play a one-time pass. But it was because Souček just got the ball, turns around, and he just hits it, a really lazy pass into kind of no man's land. But again, we'll touch on that one maybe in a minute. But
I'll just quickly say that if Souček had put in half the fight that Soufal had that game, we wouldn't even be talking about him and criticising him. He would have been key in that. But he showed absolutely not.
Paqueta and Declan, the work rate they put in, at times it felt like they were doing double.
Yeah.
And you just kind of look at it and you go, I've been a big fan of Souček for a long time. I think he's been fantastic for us. But I think we are starting to move beyond him. And that's not necessarily been reflected. And I feel a bit for him because we now are like in positions like this where we pick him out as a weak link and and I described him earlier as an anchor in our midfield. And not an anchor as in terms of he sits there and he anchors our midfield really well, is in that he's weighing it down. So I feel that it's not necessarily his fault now because he's been picked and he's been put in a tactic that doesn't necessarily suit him. And that's the problem. We have two very mobile and dynamic midfielders in Paqueta and Rice. Then we have the blunt instrument, and that blunt instrument's not being used correctly. And I think that's what is causing frustration. And games like yesterday had some brilliant defensive pieces in terms of clearing at set pieces and so on. By and large, if we had someone else come on in his position that last 10, 15 minutes, I'm sure they could have done what he did and possibly maybe done one moment in the game that could have been instrumental in potentially winning us a game. Not saying that they would have or they will do. But again, it's that shoulda, woulda, coulda moment of why did we not take it? Why did we leave him on and take off Paqueta, for instance? That kind of, that's what kind of sometimes baffles you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's, I think when we talk about him in the future, I think we have to look at him as a squad player. And I'm going to kind of say the same thing about Downs. And people might not like it, but I think if we want to progress, if we want players who are equivalent to Rice, who are performing with the ability of Paqueta, we have to use these players as rotational, as as players to come in and fill options. You know, you can give them a run of games to cover someone, but if you're looking in the summer and thinking, right, we could go for Kefren Thuram, we could go for Okuchagawa from Lille, and even maybe say a Kone or whoever, whatever ambitious target you want to say, someone like Sangare, then you have to be thinking, well, I'm sorry, they're not, Downs and Souček aren't on that level. So they need to be the players to rotate in. You can play them against a lower league side in a cup, or you can play them against a side in Europe who are from a slightly lesser league, but then they're not ready or they're not able to fill the void that players of quality will leave.
Yeah. And I think, Alison makes a great point about we could have won, and one of the comments is that we didn't win it because the Antonio header late on. Now, that also misses a very glaring piece about the Antonio header, was that he was very, very offside. So it wouldn't have counted. But we could concentrate on the negative that he was offside, and we'll mention about it. But I want to kind of talk about the positives within this, in that right up, in the 80th minute, we were looking to push again. It is a fantastic tackle from Souček. He was poor all game, but this and one other instance, he made a really good tackle. The other one, when he made a great tackle, moves in position, asks Paqueta to play it through. Paqueta plays it through. He has then no wherewithal, understanding where that ball potentially goes, and just kind of watches it just go past it. But that was, again, part of my frustration. When he does get in good positions, his mind, his body is just not on the same wavelength level as others within the team. But anyway, in this sequence, again, he wins the ball. Ben White comes charging out. Paqueta, beautiful feet, just a nice little shimmy, takes it round him. And then all of a sudden, we're in a fantastic position, and he plays it into Benrahma. Benrahma cuts in, tries to have a shot, which is well blocked by Holding. But what was impressive was, as the ball's coming out, he completely shoulder to shoulder knocks Holding off his feet. So Holding doesn't go completely to the ground, but he goes into a shoulder to shoulder with Benrahma, and Benrahma showed really good determination and strength there. Something we often criticise him for not showing, and he did it. He held it up, got the ball down the wing. Beautiful cross with his left foot. Again, something we've criticised him about, and something I've noticed has really improved in the last 5 or 6 games, is his crossing with his left foot. It's actually got so much better. Yeah,
it's a brilliant ball in, and he seems to be a lot more comfortable hitting these balls across the goal, and just either floating in across or hitting it like he did there with a bit of venom on it.
Yeah, and again, you can even see in this picture that Antonio is offside. Now, Antonio is offside throughout this whole sequence, and he just doesn't have either the awareness, the inclination, the energy to get himself back onside. Had he got himself back onside, I think we would have been probably waxing more lyrical about fair play, Antonio. You got yourself in position, you missed an opportunity, but it's a bit tainted with a bit of, why did you just not get yourself back in a position? Just kind of comes, laziness is probably a harsh word, but again, it's awareness. It's that positioning, the understanding of where you are on the pitch, and he just didn't really seem to be aware of where he was or what was doing. And it kind of, again, we have a brilliant cross. He headers it, it smashes the crossbar and goes wide. Now Antonio of a few seasons back, he buries that with his head. I genuinely can't remember the last time he scored with his head. And it was a moment where in the game, you're like, what have we just missed? And obviously watching it back, I realised he was acres offside. But that was a little frustrating.
Well, I was really, obviously this was one of the things that started off a discussion in the group chat. But for me, as if you're a forward, keep yourself on side. It's unforgivable in that position that you are not at least in line with the centre back. Antonio's just dawdling about on the area, and I'm not going to be too harsh on him, but they made the point on Match of the Day, which was what I was aiming to make in the group chat, that if you get yourself on side, you give yourself a better run at the ball and you can throw yourself at it, and you're not stuck heading it towards or across the goal. Like, you give yourself a much better chance of winning that. And
he positioned himself. That's the annoying part is he done everything right apart from not getting onside. Positions himself brilliantly, makes fantastic contact. The unfortunate thing is it's crossbar, but had he done that one piece, like we said about those defending of those goals from Arsenal, or when someone attacking that ball from Bowen, it's just those small, tiny little details that we're missing. And when we get that right, we can beat anyone, as we proved in that game. We could have beat Arsenal, and it wouldn't have been unjust. Yes, we only had, I believe, 28% of possession or something like that. In fact, here you go. Here on the ticker tape here, you'll see we had, I think, 28% possession against Arsenal. That's kind of not a surprise. And we saw with Leicester, possession doesn't really matter unless you're kind of doing something with it or not doing anything with it. Arsenal had a lot of ball, didn't really do a huge deal. In fact, we had more shots than them in the game. We had a lot more corners. So you would argue the most threatening attacking team was us. We showed the more intent in actually to score a goal. We didn't have the ball, but when we did, we were trying to be a lot more positive. And then what I did kind of like, we were actually a lot more direct. We played a lot on the second balls. We didn't necessarily always look to try and build out from the back. We kind of knew Arsenal were going to press us. And I think that's what got Arsenal, in the fact that we just refused to kind of play into their hands of, we're going to try and play out from the back. We just went a bit unfashionable in some ways. We also played some beautiful football in there, but we actually mixed up our game. And it was something that Newcastle have done all season. They will at times play not nice bits of football, but when they need to play a bit more brute one, play on those second, third balls, they'll do it. They need to concede possession, they'll do it. They'll play on the counter. It's things, the elements of that display is what we've seen over the last 2 seasons, which was why we did so well. But we had extra quality in that team, and we could have won it at the end with Antonio's chance. Fortunately, it was offside. But there are other opportunities where we could have. I think, again, making subs earlier might have impacted us. But I know we've talked about some negatives, but I think we've been largely positive. And it was a great game. And to come back from 2-0 down against a team like Arsenal and to have them rattled was a big thing. They tried a time waste and they got their comeuppance. And the thing that made it even sweeter was when we were 2-0 up, the arrogance within their fan base, shouting out, "Are we Tottenham in disguise?" Absolutely loving it. And then just to watch them just completely go within a shell, go completely quiet when Bowen scored that goal, and then all of the crowd turning round to them and singing, "Are you Tottenham in disguise?" to them after they've blown the second 2-0 lead in the Premier League 2 weeks running. It was just, num.
Well, I think I was going to give them a lot of credit, the away fans, because I was really impressed with them for about 20 minutes. They were loud and they were singing. Yep. They completely put us to shame from about the second minute when they had their first chance, and you could hear a pin drop. It was it was pretty scary. And then when they scored their goals, they were the louder. However, as soon as we started to get our tails up again, everyone just got behind. It was rocking at times. And as I said, when Saka missed a penalty, it was like we'd scored. It erupted, and you could feel the energy driving them on. And
I think that's what even Moyes said, wasn't it? And Antonio, I think, came out and said that, he felt the energy from the crowd, and that actually helped them. I think there was, again, as we've said constantly, if you give a little to us, we'll give a hell of a lot back. And when we saw them going for it, that the crowd responded and were massively behind the team. And we don't think it's always been a way. West Ham fans can take losing if we see you going for it. I think we were even today, had we lost 3-2 in the last minute and Moyes was going all out for us to win, I think we would all have been, you know what, fair play, Moyes. You lost today, not your fault. You went for it.
You can hold your hands up and you can say, at least you tried. No, but you're showing the minerals, that old nut. But you're showing what's needed. You're showing the fight to try and stay in the league and to try and win the game. And if that backfires, it backfires. That's football.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get that extra goal, you get the 3 points, then you come away buzzing. And, you know,
Absolutely.
it is a real positive. It's a really positive performance and a really positive point to take away. It will put out a lot of pressure onto the teams below us. But you can't help but feel we could have just got a little bit more.
Exactly. And that's, for me, is the only frustration, is the fact that I just walked away going, there was a chance that we could have got a little bit more. And it seems ridiculous that we walk out of a game where we're 2-0 down, we get a fantastic result, and there's that slight bit of me going, oh, but there's maybe more in there. And that's not a negative. That is a good thing, that we are walking out of a game where we're in a terrible situation and we're walking out going, we could have won that. And it gives you confidence. And I think it was Cliff actually who said that, you know, after this game, or basically because of this game, it's kind of made him feel, you know, not daunted by the rest of the season. And it's kind of, you know, here it is. You know, first time this season, I'm looking forward to our remaining games. And it was one of those games where you go, that's my club. That's the club I want to see. And you then go, you sit there and you go, fair enough, Moyes in fans, 100%. You have every right to bask in the result. You have every reason to turn around and question those that say Moyes out. And, you know, we are both Moyes out. We will both concede, did very well. 100% gets credit for that game and so on. I'm not going to bring anything negative into it. I'm actually being genuine. And yeah, he deserves all the praise in that game. And if he allows the team to play in that way, and we go on to win a cup, and he plays exactly like we did against Arsenal towards the end of the season, there is a valid conversation around him remaining. Not that I think he will, but it's a valid conversation if that's the way we play in and out of possession through the remainder of the season, because that is a team that is arguably going to go places, is arguably going to push on, and arguably going to be looking to fight. And, you know, absolutely echo those points there. You know, I hope we see this fight to the rest of the season. And I think that's all we asked for. All season we've asked for some fight. We've asked for some sort of acknowledgement that people care. And I think the players really reacted really well to the fans yesterday. I think obviously Moyes tried to stop some of the excitement in the players, in that he asked Fabianski a couple of times not to throw it quickly and to remain calm.
I think it was obviously the fact that I was pitch side before the game. I thought,
exactly.
We need to pull our fingers out, or he's going to give us a right going over.
But I think it's one of those, we walk away from it slight tinge of frustration, purely because we could have won that. But at the same time, you walk away going, that's almost a win, because
I mean, as Lee said, if we play like that for the rest of the season, we'll be. If we play like that against Ghent, we'll blow them out the water.
Oh, absolutely will do. And when you look at the league now, we are 31 points, 4 points. 4 points above relegation zone, because Nottingham Forest is in there and 27 points. Massive goal difference advantage. So in theory, we're 5 points clear now of relegation. So you would argue 2 more wins between now and the end of the season, which is more than achievable, then we are safe. That'd be 37 points. You would argue Moyes has done his job in the respect of keeping us in the league. Now he needs to go all out for the thing. So obviously we've got Ghent now, huge game, because there is no reason why we shouldn't be trying to win that. Bournemouth again is absolutely massive. But win that Bournemouth game, I would probably say we're as good as safe.
Yeah.
I think we could get another result between then. But I think, have to win the Ghent game. We beat Bournemouth. I would argue we are safe. Obviously not counting my chickens too much, but you would say that would put us in a very good position. Our goal difference is very strong. We already have, say, 4 points, technically 5 if you include goal difference above relegation. So, I'm feeling relatively positive about our survival hopes. I think that Arsenal game has been the lift we've all needed as fans, because we haven't seen, while some of the results have been decent, the performance hasn't matched that. And I think now we've actually got a performance and a result. And I think that's kind of lifted a lot of anxiety. It certainly has for me, but it's kind of lifted as well in the players that actually we can do this. We can play some good football. We can do this against a big team. You just now need them to replicate that against teams that aren't Arsenal and so on, and really kind of start to do it. And if they do it, I don't think we're going to be ending the season in a negative. I think we could be ending it on a high, and it could be a fantastic farewell journey. If it goes as what's been intimated in the press, I think it could be a fantastic way to end after all of the problems we've had this year. It could be a great way for everyone to walk off into the sunset, holding hands and singing about telling stories of old and just recanting about, it was a bit of a shit one this year, but you know what? You come good in the end. So I'm really looking forward to the end of the season now, if we can play like this. But Sloth, I'll leave you with final words. I've rambled on a lot and my voice is starting now to go.
No, I think you've pretty much nailed it. I think you've hit the nail on the head, where I think if we play like that for the rest of the season, we will, without a doubt, pick up enough points to survive, and we'll go into games in Europe with a lot of confidence. And to be honest, I think, Fiorentina are probably the team that we're gonna be saying they're the ones to beat if we face them in the final, if we make the final. But if we play like we did against Arsenal, we should blow them out the water as well. And I do think that they are they have been somewhat flattered. It's they've been very clinical with their finishing, but we do have the players to go there and meet them in Prague and beat them. So, I think going into the end of the season, take this momentum, use this as a building block. We have got City. So if we play like this against City, we'll see what happens.
To lose against City, because I'd love them to see you take the title of Arsenal. I can allow that game. I can take a little bit of a drumming in that one if it means you get the goal difference that stops.
No. I'll just take the one Haaland goal, please. It will just be a 1-0 loss, but we'll battled 89th minute Haaland winner or something. As long as we keep the performances up. I think we'll do well for the rest of the season. I think it's a good positive result. As you said, kind of little bit there that is just out of reach for us in terms of we could have maybe done a little bit more, but aside from that, I think it's definitely left us feeling very positive.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, mate. And Cliff, thank you for doing the job for me. Yes, everyone, please do hit the like button. Please do subscribe. It massively helps us. So yeah, as we say, please do subscribe. Please do share. Please do like. Follow us on Twitter. I'm going to plug everything because Frankie's watching. If we don't play it, he will be very unhappy with us in the group chat. Yeah. So please do like, subscribe, follow. Everything you can possibly do, please do. We've just hit 500 subscribers, which thank you everyone for liking and subscribing. Again, Cass, I believe it was, who got the ticket for Arsenal. I've seen that you really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that you have, mate. I'm glad that we could make that possible, or mainly Frankie make it possible. But again, to give a fan an opportunity to go to the game completely free again was another great thing. But everyone, thank you for watching. Appreciate it's been a long one today. But yeah, what a difference a draw can make. A win would have made us ecstatic, but it's a fantastic draw. And yeah, long live the Irons. And one last thing left to say, Sloth. Come on, you Irons.